Coming up on this Monday edition of Daybreak, addressing the closing mass of the 6th Asian Youth Day in Korea, Pope Francis urges young Catholics in Asia to help those in need with their youthfulness, goodwill and optimism. North Korea warns Seoul it will launch preemptive attacks at any time in response to a joint military exercise between South Korea and the United States that starts today. Plus, police in the US town of Ferguson have used smoke bombs and tear gas to clear crowds continuing to protest over the shooting by police of an unarmed black teenager. Daybreak begins now.
Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Monday, August 18th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom and you are tuned in to Daybreak. We start this morning with the latest on Pope Francis's trip to Korea. On Sunday, the 4th day of his 5-day visit, Pope Francis held the closing mass for the Asian Youth Day at Haemi Fortress in the country's southwest, where he encouraged young people in attendance to live a life filled with joy and purpose. Our Hwang Ji-hye starts us off.
The Pope made several stops to greet children during a parade toward the altar for the Asian Youth Day closing mass on Sunday. Thousands of people waved and cheered despite the nasty weather as the Pope gave his blessings. In the homily, he asked young Catholics to stay awake, saying that no one who sleeps can neither sing, dance, nor rejoice.
It is the duty to be vigilant, not to allow the pressures, the temptations, and the sins of ourselves or others to dull our sensibility to the beauty of holiness.
Around 45,000 people, including 6,000 young Catholics from 23 Asian countries and Asian bishops, attended the Mass at Haemi Fortress, where thousands of Korean Catholics were brutally executed in the 1800s. The Mass proceeded in many languages, including Indonesian, Japanese, and Korean. It was an unforgettable day for many of the participants.
In between, there was one part where he said, do not be afraid, be brave. And at the end, he said, Asian youth, wake up. You know, that really puts a lot of energy.
I feel blessed and honored, of course, to be part of this big event. It is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to meet the Pope and also to meet other young people in Asia.
Asian Youth Day is a gathering of young Catholics where they can explore and renew their faith. The first one was held in Thailand in 1999. The 6th Asian Youth Day that took place here in Korea was the first to be attended by the Pope. The 7th Asian Youth Day will take place in Indonesia in 2017. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News, Seosan.
And earlier in the day, Pope Francis baptized one of the fathers of the victims of April's Seoul ferry disaster. The man was given the Christian name Francis after the pontiff himself. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
The father of a student who was lost in April's ferry disaster was baptized by the Pope on Sunday morning. 56-year-old Lee Ho-jin, whose son died when the Seoul ferry sank, had asked the Pope baptize him, and the Pope granted his wish. This is the first time in 25 years that the Pope has baptized a Korean member of the laity since 12 Korean Catholic youth were baptized by Pope John Paul II in 1989 during his visit to Korea. The new Christian name that Lee received was Francis after the Pope himself.
He was very happy to receive from the Pope the baptism and his name. So that for the Pope this was really a great joy, because this was not in the program of the visit to Korea to give a baptism, but this was a surprise, a occasion that was inspired by the Holy Spirit, I think.
Lee, who has been attending a Catholic church for the last 2 years, began a 38-day pilgrimage across the country after he lost his youngest child in the ferry disaster. He walked some 900 kilometers on foot carrying a cross. He met with the Pope during the Mass in Daejeon on Friday when he asked the pontiff to baptize him, and the Holy Father gladly accepted his wish. Later on during the 4th day of his visit, Pope Francis met with dozens of bishops from Asian countries. During the meeting with regional Catholic leaders in Asia, the pontiff stressed the importance of genuine dialogue based on empathy in a truly contemplative spirit of openness and receptivity to each other. He also expressed his wish to engage in further dialogue with some Asian countries with which Vatican does not yet have a full relationship. On the last day of his 5-day visit to Korea, the Pope will meet with religious leaders from other faiths, including Buddhist and Protestant, before presiding over a Peace and Reconciliation Mass at Myeongdong Cathedral in Seoul. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, in the rest of the day's news, South Korea and the United States kick off their annual military exercises. On this Monday, the computer-simulated aided Joint Ulchi Freedom Guardian drills, which run through next Friday, mobilizes roughly 50,000 South Korean and 30,000 US troops. The main purpose of the exercise is to maintain security on the Korean peninsula while upholding joint defense capabilities between the two allies. This year, the exercise will involve the testing of a new tailored strategy, which is aimed at deterring the North's nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. Pyongyang has condemned the exercises, warning of quote-unquote merciless preemptive attacks on Seoul if it goes ahead with the drills. Now, a senior North Korean official has expressed his disapproval regarding the joint military exercises between South Korea and the US, and also for Seoul's stance on Pyongyang's nuclear program. Kim Yang-gon, who is the head of the United Front Department of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party, reportedly made these remarks on Sunday as delegations from the two Koreas met to present a wreath to mark the 5th anniversary of the passing of former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung. This on behalf, in fact, of the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Park Ji-won, who is a leader from South Korea's opposition party and the chief of staff to President Kim Dae-jung, said the North Korean official wanted to know why Seoul called for fresh inter-Korean talks ahead of these joint military drills. He was also reportedly disappointed that President Park Geun-hye called for the North to abandon its nuclear ambitions during her speech last Friday, marking Korea's Liberation Day.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, Korea could hold a long-delayed summit with Japan if certain conditions are met beforehand. In an interview with Korean broadcaster KBS, South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said Sunday that Korea would not exclude the possibility of a summit between the two nations, just as long as Tokyo takes sincere steps towards resolving a number of bilateral issues, including Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Yoon observed that Korea-Japan summits held over the past 10 years have often ended in a very bitter atmosphere rather than being substantive, and this has actually led to worsened relations. He said sufficient preparation is needed in order for a summit to be successful. Korean President Park Geun-hye has not met one-on-one with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe since taking office in February last year due to tensions over historical issues. Next year marks the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between Korea and Japan. Now, the town of Southfield, Michigan, in the US, has unveiled the second statue outside of Korea honouring the victims of Japan's wartime system of sex slavery. The statue was unveiled at a ceremony over the weekend. Now, it is a replica of the peace monument Korean civic leaders set up across the road from the Japanese embassy right here in Seoul. Plans to install the statue were launched about 3 years ago, but have been delayed due to a lack of funds and opposition from the Japanese community there in Southfield. Detroit's Korean-American community said the monument was not established to target Japan specifically, but rather to promote women's rights and peace. The first Comfort Women statue in the U.S. was installed in Glendale City, California in July 2013. Now, in some economic news, and after Korea's central bank lowered the benchmark interest rate last week for the first time in well over a year, commercial banks are following suit, raising concerns the average deposit interest rate might actually fall below the 2% mark, and this could adversely affect the elderly, who lean very heavily on interest given by the banks. Son Jung-in has this report.
These days, it's considered almost impossible to save a decent amount of money from the interest given by local banks.
I'm having a hard time making ends meet because the interest rate can't catch up with inflation.
Deposit interest rates here in Korea have dropped sharply over the last 6 years. The one-year fixed deposit rate that reached 5.87% in 2008 slipped to 2.68% in June. The rate has continued tumbling over the last 2 months, with most commercial banks currently offering interest rates in the low 2% range. But experts predict they will go down even further after the Bank of Korea cut the benchmark interest rate by 0.25 percentage point to 2.25% last week. They say it might not be long before interest rates are in the 1% range, since the local economy is showing no signs of improvement, even with the easing of real estate market rules.
We'll closely monitor the effects of the rate cut and come up with appropriate measures to deal with changes to consumer behavior and household debt.
Japan already experienced a similar situation and entered an ultra-low interest rate era a long time ago. Its 1 to 3 year fixed deposit rate averaged just 0.35% at its highest. The elderly suffer the most, since many of them live off the interest on their savings. Local economists say Korea should come up with countermeasures such as raising pensions if it wants to avoid a Japan-style low-interest era. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, in some health-related news, you are at a particular risk of dehydration during the summer, and even more so if you're relatively active and spend a good amount of time outdoors in the sunshine. Experts advise people to drink enough liquids, specifically water, to protect themselves from the ill effects of the heat. But how much do you need to drink? Our Kim Min-ji has this report.
To enjoy a healthy summer, experts say it is essential to practice good hydration habits, as not drinking enough water can be quite harmful.
Paying attention to hydration during summer is going to enable you to enjoy your summer without feeling too fatigued.
Certain fruits and vegetables can fulfill your fluid requirements, but 80% of your hydration comes from the water and other beverages. So when is the right time to drink water? Many people look for water when they get thirsty, but doctors say that it may be too late.
You want to outpace your thirst. You do not want to get thirsty. When you're thirsty, you're already mildly dehydrated.
Experts say it is important to keep a bottle of water within reach at all times. That way you can access water wherever and whenever and be sure that you're keeping hydrated consistently. It is also important to know the right amount of water you need to drink per day. Experts advise about 9 glasses for the average woman and 12 glasses for men. And what is the best kind of drink?
Water is a perfect hydration policy. Stick with water.
Also keep in mind that some caffeinated beverages are okay, but it is best to be wary of alcohol because it causes dehydration. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Monday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Relative calm has returned to Ferguson, the small city in the U.S. state of Missouri, gripped by racial tensions since police shot dead an unarmed African-American teenager some 9 days ago. 7 people were arrested Sunday after a curfew imposed by the state governor failed to quell the violence. Our Connie Kim takes you there.
Police fired smoke bombs and tear gas at a group of protesters who defied a curfew imposed in the town of Ferguson, Missouri, where the shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white police officer has sparked protests. Some 150 people gathered early Sunday near the convenience store where the teen was shot to protest a curfew, demanding that justice be done and asserting that 18-year-old Michael Brown is innocent. The demonstration came just after the midnight to 5 a.m. curfew went into effect to end angry clashes between police and protesters, which have been mostly peaceful and followed Missouri Governor Jay Nixon's declaration of a state of emergency on Saturday.
I signed an order declaring a state of emergency and ordering the implementation of a curfew in the impacted area of Ferguson.
Ferguson, a town of about 22,000 in eastern Missouri, has been shaken since August 9th when the black teenager was shot by a white police officer, sparking racially charged protests over the past week. Tensions escalated Friday after police released CCTV video footage from the convenience store that allegedly shows a teen who looks like Brown stealing a pack of cigarettes and threatening the clerk. Brown's family has condemned the release of the video and says it's not clear if the person in the video is Brown or not. The events of the shooting also remain unclear, with police saying that Brown struggled with the officer and reached for a weapon. Witnesses, however, say Brown was not attacking the officer and already had his hands up when he was shot. Brown's family has demanded the officer be held accountable for his actions. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And new this morning, Missouri Governor Jay Nixon has blamed local police for the renewed violence on Sunday, saying its release of CCTV footage and a police report implicating Michael Brown had an incendiary effect. Meanwhile, U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder has ordered another autopsy on Brown, this time by a federal medical examiner honoring a request by family members of the deceased 18-year-old. And turning now to events in Iraq, Kurdish Peshmerga fighters are engaged in a fierce battle with Islamic State insurgents to reclaim Iraq's largest dam in Mosul. A Kurdish official said most of the surrounding area had been seized as Peshmerga fighters pushed for control of all of Mosul Dam. Reuters reports residents in the region were told to leave by Islamic State militants who planted bombs alongside roads leading in and out of the facility. Peshmerga forces were clearing those booby traps as U.S. airstrikes hit IS checkpoints and vehicles in the area. IS militants had seized Mosul Dam some 10 days ago, triggering concerns they could use the major source of water and power to flood regions downstream. Islamic State insurgents have overtaken much of Iraq's north, but Kurdish forces have retaken 2 majority Christian towns 30 kilometers from Mosul. An Ebola quarantine center in Liberia was attacked by protesters, freeing at least 20 patients who were under observation for the contagious virus. It happened in the capital of Monrovia, in a densely populated township described as a slum on Saturday evening local time. Reports say protesters called Ebola a hoax, and though it is not confirmed that the virus was at the center, officials are concerned that blood-stained bedding looted from the center could serve as a serious infection risk. An estimated 50,000 people reside in the West Point neighborhood. Another Ukrainian fighter jet has been shot down by pro-Russian separatists, this time over the region of Luhansk. A Ukrainian military spokesman said the pilot ejected out of the plane and was taken to a secure place. This as a Russian convoy of humanitarian goods arrived at a border checkpoint near Donetsk. Kiev has inspected the first group of trucks and agreed to let them proceed with the guidance of the International Committee of the Red Cross. Meanwhile, foreign ministers Leaders of Ukraine and Russia, together with their German and French counterparts, are set to meet in Berlin Sunday local time to find an end to this crisis.
And a good Monday morning to you all as we kick things off with some updates on the current search for the South Korean national football team head coach. And looks like after all signs were pointing to the KFA signing Bert Van Marwijk, talks broke down and they're still without a head coach. Now, 2 weeks after Lee Young-soo, the head of the technical committee, spoke with Van Marwijk, the Dutch coach decided to decline the job offer with two sides unable to agree on the contract numbers. Now, reports also say that Van Marwijk wanted to work close to Europe because of his family, and that didn't go too well with the KFA neither. Meanwhile, with the September A matches coming up soon, the KFA might opt to go with an interim head coach before choosing their next permanent head coach. And now shifting gears to the Volleyball World Grand Prix 2014 as the South Korean women's national volleyball team faced off against Serbia for the second time in this tournament. And while Korea failed to beat the Serbian side in their first clash, the second time's a different story as Kim Young-kyung puts up 30 points in this game, helping Korea win 3-1. But despite all that, their two losses against China and Japan over the weekend were costly as they finished the tournament at 4 wins and 5 losses and fails to advance to the knockout stages. And now moving over to some Sunday night's K-League Classic action, Gyeongnam FC defeated Sangju 3-1 with Busan I-Park holding on to beat the Seongnam FC in a high-scoring match 4-2. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the Jeonnam Dragons take on the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings. Now, despite Suwon playing a very aggressive match in the first half, both sides going into the second half of the match scoreless. But the second half is Jeonnam's An Young-woo who scores the first goal of the match, giving Jeonnam the 1-0 lead in the 61st minute before former Blue Wings Stevo makes it 2-0 Jeonnam in the 71st minute. Now, Suwon does get on the score sheet thanks to Santos in the 77th minute, but An Young-woo scores his second goal of the night in the 88th minute as Jeonnam cruises past Suwon 3-1. And now finishing things off with Sunday night's KBO action, we had 2 games get rained down, but the Doosan Bears swept the weekend series against the Lotte Giants with a 7-4 victory for the team's 2,000th win. Meanwhile, let's take a look at the NC Dinos take on the Hanwha Eagles. Of course, going into game here, second inning, bases loaded for Kim Jong-ho. That's a 2-run single, and the NC Dinos take an early 2-0 lead. Stays that way until the 8th inning of the game. Kim Tae-won, RBI single to right center, and Hanwha cuts the deficit to 2-1. But next batter, Choi Jin-hang deep to right center, and gone. The Hanwha Eagles take the lead 3-2. But in the bottom of the inning with man on, Eric Thames to the rescue. A 2-run shot to deep center, 130 meters, as he helps the NC Dinos come back to win this one. 4-3, your final score. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Nationwide autumn monsoon rain is forecast to continue today. It's dropping light drizzle to heavy downpour in the entire nation. Heavy rain advisory was issued down south, where the heavy rain warning is in place for Jeollado area and Gwangju this morning. So it seems like nationwide rain will continue throughout the day, and temperatures will be a couple of degrees lower than yesterday, hovering at about 25 degrees Celsius in many areas. So Let's take a closer look at those temperatures. The morning low here in the capital and Daegu, Gwangju, Busan all starting out at 21, and high in Seoul and Daegu and Gwangju will all rise to 25, while Busan will top out at 24 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island should be the warmest place, getting up to 28. Daejeon will top out at 24, and Dokdo should see highs of 22, while Mount Keungang reaches at 16. Don't forget to gear up with rainproof accessories before heading out today, because it's going to be a rainy one today. Now that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. Thank you ever so much for watching the programme. Korea Today is coming up in about 30 minutes' time. We'll be back throughout the day with many more news updates. I'll be back at 10 a.m. Korea time. Till then, goodbye.